Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third Masterclass training as part of our Masterclass series. Today, we're going to talk about how to use the football software to find value selections. Let's go. So, what we'll be covering today, number one, we're going to cover how to use the football software. Number two, we're going to cover how to create a strategy hypothesis. Number three, we're going to talk about how to create a basic strategy. Number four, we're going to talk about how to test that strategy. Okay, so why is this important? Really good question to always be asking on these training courses. Number one, creating winning strategies will make you profitable. Pretty obvious, but something to always have at the back of your mind. Thinking like a Betfair trader creates winning habits. Okay, habits are really important and they do take time to form. Combining maths with theory is a solid foundation. So a lot of trading is just going to be based on maths. Whether or not you think it or know it, maths actually is the answer to everything in trading. When you think you've found a good selection, it's because you think you've found good value. It's because you think you've found odds that are better than they should be. And that all ultimately comes down to maths. Okay, so here's some of the objections you will usually hear. Betfair traders with bad strategies cannot win. Pretty obvious, right? Most traders who bet on their gut feel lose money. Now, I know there are some people that bet that way and they do great, and that's great, right? Good on them, yeah? As I always say, there are more than one way to skin a cat. There's so many different Betfair trading techniques that work. But in my experience, and what I generally try and do when I'm training you guys, is I try and look at what works for most people. You know, what's the thing that works for the majority? And clearly, things like betting on gut feel don't really work very well for most people. Most traders who just watch a game and place a bet lose money. Now, again, there are going to be exceptions to this. There are traders who will just watch a game and be able to make money from that game. But just doing that alone, without any training, without any software, most people are going to lose money doing it. The simple maths is bad strategy equals loss of money. Value is critical with Betfair trading. Learning how to find value matters. So one of the things that I've noticed, and one of the things that probably annoys me a little bit, is that when people are trying to train Betfair traders, they talk about value, sure, but they don't actually talk about how to find value. It just becomes this kind of mythical concept where it's like, yeah, you've just got to find value. Okay, it's that easy, is it? No, of course not. There are ways of doing it, and you need to be specific about that, and that's what we're going to get into today. Lots of people talk value, like I just said, and it's rarely explained. Using software to get selections saves time and money. You guys already know this. I'm preaching to the choir, but the reason this is part of the training is that I want to show you why it's important to use that software yourself and create strategies with it. You don't want to sit there with this brilliant piece of software that you all have access to, by the way, and then not be using it. Most traders don't test their strategies. Believe it or not, most traders still do not test their strategies. They just can't be bothered. Basic use of a spreadsheet can improve your trading massively. And we are talking extremely basic. The spreadsheet I use, and there is a copy of this in the forum. So if you want it, just hit me up and I'll send it over to you. I'll give you a link to it. You can all download this from the forum. It's incredibly basic. You just input your results and it actually just acts out the profit, strike rate, couple of other bits, but it's not massively complex. It's not difficult to follow and it's not difficult to do. Now, you might say spreadsheets confuse me. Okay, I'll tell you what, I didn't used to use spreadsheets when I first started. No one really would have done, because I mean we're going back to what, 2004 when I started, and I think Betfair started around 2002. So you're talking about years before people were using spreadsheets on a daily basis. Well, everyone was. Obviously, a lot of people would have been if it was part of their job, but we weren't generally using them to make lists and things all the time like we do now, or like I do now. So I used to just use good old-fashioned pen and paper. I wrote my results down. Now, if you don't like the idea of using a spreadsheet, or you just literally want to just write it down, that's absolutely fine, okay? There's more than one way to skin a cat, as I said, but it's important that we do it. It's important that we test, okay? Because testing doesn't cost a penny. You can do all this stuff. You can note odds down. You could place theoretical bets where you go, okay, what would have happened if I had bet a tenner like I planned to? Instead of betting the tenner when you're not sure of something's value, you can go, I'm going to test this and it doesn't cost me any money, and I'll write down the result and see if it is profitable in the long term. Okay, so here's some of the objections. I kind of went a bit early on the objections. Here are the actual objections. But statistics and software are meaningless. So I sometimes hear this. I don't hear this very often anymore. This used to be a thing, I think, that was leveled a few years ago, but mainly because people didn't really know how to use statistics, and there wasn't really Betfair trading software that helped you with your trading per se. There was the kind of stuff like BetAngel, which was good for like getting you into a market quickly and out of it, but it didn't really help you get your selections. It didn't really help you create strategies. But now that we have the powerful software that you guys can all use, you're in a place where you have got something that you can use and use it well. Okay, so let's look at this. And like I say, this is often a pure lie. And funnily enough, it's been perpetuated a lot by football pundits. So you often will hear pundits kind of say, and it's a very sort of old-fashioned way of thinking, oh, statistics are meaningless. All that matters is the final result. And you go, well, sure, in that instance, but statistics aren't meaningless. There's a reason why every single industry uses them to the nth degree. There's a reason why people pay hundreds of thousands of pounds a year for data analysts. And Premier League football clubs, how much money do they spend on data analysis? Because the reality is, if something's happening and the result might not go the way the stats suggested, but the reality is most of the time it will. So when it does, if you keep doing that same thing and keep having it, let's say you're dominating a match, right? But you lose it. Well, are you going to turn around and go, you shouldn't play like that anymore. You shouldn't dominate the football match because you lost it. The stats were meaningless. What you did was rubbish. What you should do is try and not dominate. Try and not score as many. Try as hard to score goals, and actually you'll do better. Who actually thinks that works? No one, right? But you'll often hear pundits go, well, stats are meaningless, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, if you're dominating a match, over the next 10 matches, you're going to win more often than you lose. Yeah. So the reality is, if we can always do this in Betfair trading. If you take one result in isolation, you could prove anything you wanted to. You could prove any point you wanted to. But one result is meaningless. It's all about the effects of things in the long term. And it's exactly the same with Betfair trading. Okay. Like I say, every walk of life is guided by statistics. Sports hugely influenced by software statistics, as is sports betting. And like I say, stats really matter, and I've explained the reasons why. Now, the other objection we get quite a lot is it's too hard to create a strategy, which is part of the reason I'm doing this training here. So it is true, it does take a few minutes to learn how to do it, and it does take a few minutes to learn how to use the software, both in football and in horse racing, okay? But the thing is, once you do learn it, it's a bit like learning to drive, right? Once it clicks, it really clicks, and you're able to create really powerful strategies. And like, for instance, in the horse racing, I just go and I'll create a strategy, and then I'll be like, oh, actually, that doesn't work, this works. And I get really excited creating all these strategies. I really enjoy doing it. I'll quite often just put a day aside and go, right, today I'm going to create some strategies, okay? And it's the same with football. I love doing that. But the fact is that when I first looked at it, yeah, it took me a few minutes to learn how to use it. I had to watch some of the training videos, okay? Now, I know a lot of people don't like watching, and I bet there's a lot of you watching this right now going, I have not watched any of the training videos, all right? So it's really important to learn it. But once you do, it clicks. It's not something that you keep having to learn, right? So, for example, I quite like playing board games as a hobby, but I quite like playing, those really geeky board games that have quite complex rules and, put it this way, much deeper strategy games than, say, Monopoly. Okay. Now, with some of those, if you don't play them for a couple of months, you come back to it, you have to totally relearn the rules again. It's really hard. You can't remember what you have to do. You can't remember all the little bits. That's not the case with our software. It has been designed so that once you learn it, you've learned it, and you can keep using it, and you can figure out new strategies. And that's super cool, because what it allows you to do is really complex things, create really, really deep, clever, complex strategies, but not have to keep relearning every time you want to do that. So yeah, I really do say, because it's a skill for life. once you learn how to do it. And I think it's really important as a Betfair trader to have the skill to be able to create a strategy. So if you haven't already gone and tried it in the previous training, I did a little bit of training, didn't I, before this full training session, showing you how to create a strategy. Please go, pause this video, please go and create that strategy now. Okay, if you have basic PC skills, you will be fine. Okay, the only thing stopping you is your effort. And that's the truth. The reality is, it's very rare that anyone's ever come to me and said, I can't use the software. I've watched every training video, I've practiced it, I've listened to your advice, and I can't do it. It's happened maybe once or twice in 10 years, and both of those occasions were that those people had never used a computer really in their life. Okay, so if you've never used a PC, it might be an issue, but most people in this day and age, even if you're old, most people in this day and age, you know, my dad's 70, he's retired, and he's been using a computer, you know, for years. So virtually everyone is going to be having used computers, and as long as you have even a basic knowledge of computers, you will be absolutely fine. So yeah, try not to get into that negative way of thinking. I think this can often be a problem for Betfair traders. So yeah, let's get into it. How to use football software and how to create a hypothesis. So what I want you to do for the first part of this is rewatch the software video demonstration. Now, I said on the last slide to some of you, if you haven't created that strategy, go and do it. So you might have already done this. If you haven't done it, pause now and go and rewatch the software demonstration. I'm going to give a little pause, and that gives you an opportunity. Okay, so hopefully you've gone and done that, because that is a big part of this training. Now, to create a new strategy hypothesis, what I want you to do is think of a market you would like to trade. So, for example, right, let's look at Ryan. I'll use Ryan as an example for this. He's kind of the master of lay the draw, right? He's kind of one of the godfathers of the lay the draw strategy. He kind of helped to popularize it on Betfair trading, and it's been a big thing for him over the years. Now, he decided, well, I like the match odds market, and in particular, I like the draw. I want to trade on the draw. So he's thought of a market he wants to trade. Now, think of a market you want to trade. Think of a side of the market you want to trade. That is the first thing to do. Think about what you like. That can often be a great starting point, because the reason is you will be more interested in it if you like it. So if I pick a market I have no interest in, so let's say something like, I'm not a big lover of the both teams to score market. I think because it didn't exist when I first started trading, I've never really taken that much to it. I always feel like these new created markets are built for bookmakers. I feel like they're built to actually hurt consumers sometimes. So I'm not convinced that both teams to score is a great stat. But it makes a ton of sense a lot of the time. I'm just not. Because I feel like you have a feeling in football where you're like, well, there's going to be goals. Okay. But it doesn't matter who scores it, does it, if there's going to be goals? Why do you want to restrict yourself? You know, you could have a both teams to score bet, and then one team scores 5 goals, the other doesn't. You lose your bet, but you could have backed over 4.5s and made a bunch of money. So that's just the simple thing with that, really, and way of thinking. Okay, so I then want you to think about the average odds in the market. Okay, so this is a really good thing to do, because, and you'll know if it's a market you like or it's a market you've been watching, you'll kind of get an idea of what the average odds are. So, for example, I know that in the over 1.5 goals market, well, over 1.5 is going to be around 1.25 average. Okay, I know that over 2.5 goals is going to be around 1.8 average, maybe closer to evens. Okay, but you're going to have a kind of roundabout idea of where the average odds are, and that's a really good kind of building block to go from. So let's say you know that the odds, let's take the over 2.5 goals market, and let's say, for instance, just in this argument, the average odds are 2.0. Well, we know that we need to find selections that score, basically have over 2.5 goals more than 50% of the time, okay? Because odds of 2.0 are 50%. Remember the last training we did, and you can go and check ACE odds, remember, and you can go and look at what the percentages mean to the odds. That's really important to learn. If you haven't done that, after this, go back and do that training. It's really important you do all the masterclass training. And so you will know that, well, yeah, if these odds say it's 50% chance of happening, I need to find games where there's more than a 50% chance that the odds are higher than 2.0. Okay, and that's the basis of your hypothesis for your strategy. Start to build a filter around your chosen odds and percentage. Okay, now the software video demonstration really does exemplify how to do that. Hopefully you've done that now and you've tried it. If you do get stuck, just look at these 4 points again and go, okay, now I'm going to go and create a strategy. Okay, how to create a strategy and how to test a strategy. Okay, training. First think of what market you want to trade. Okay, we've talked about that. What odds would you like as the minimum? Okay, again, now this is important because, so in general, I don't really like, if I'm backing something, I don't really like to back below odds of 1.5. I don't know, a psychological thing. I don't know what the reason for that is, but it's just the case. I do not like to back below those odds on a lot of outcomes. It's weird because I will lay effectively at those odds quite often. But anyway, the point is, work out what your minimum odds are that you would like to have on the market. What percentage do you need to beat those odds? We talked about ace odds already. Then create a filter as shown in the training video last week. Now, if you haven't already, and we've mentioned it a couple of times, I'm going to keep emphasizing this point because it's so important, because I really want you to go and practice this stuff, okay? Go and practice creating a strategy. Pause this video and go and have a look at creating your strategy. Okay, so we get to the testing a bit here. Test a strategy, copying selections into a spreadsheet. Now, like I say, I do have an example spreadsheet on the forum, so just message me if you want a copy of that. I'll try and remember to put it on this masterclass post, actually, a link to it, but knowing me, I might forget. So, I'm the kind of person that sometimes I think of what I need to get from upstairs when I'm downstairs. By the time I've got upstairs, I've totally forgotten what it was. Next one, record your results every day. Now, this is really important because if you don't record your results regularly, they do start to snowball and it becomes overwhelming, or at least I find it that way. So a lot of people they'll have a strategy and then they'll go, right, I'm going to update every week. Okay, but if you get a lot of selections that week, are you really going to want to sit there for a long time recording results? Or do you just want to spend 5 minutes a day doing it and just get it over with? I'd suggest the latter. Once you have a few hundred results, analyze the data. And we will talk more about testing strategies and more about analyzing data in future masterclasses. So don't worry too much if you're not 100% sure on those things. In the meantime, you can always speak to me or Ryan. Okay, so let's recap what we've learned today. It's been quite a big one. The big part of this, of course, was the pre-training that we did, and hopefully you have gone back and watched that. But let's go for it. So if you create your own strategies, you become a powerful trader. The reason is that you're not reliant on tipsters, you're not reliant on someone else, and it means that you actually are a powerful trader. I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you train to be a plumber and you're really good at being a plumber. Now, that training and the fact you can go and do this stuff yourself makes you powerful in your job. Let's say you're not a plumber, you've had no training, and you watch one YouTube video of how to fix one thing on your, let's say, washing machine or whatever, right? Now, you might have learnt one tiny bit of a skill. You probably wouldn't. You'll probably forget it as soon as it's fixed and you don't have to look at it again for a couple more years. But you haven't become a powerful plumber because of it, okay? In fact, that knowledge is almost useless to you after that point, okay? So that's kind of the difference of creating your own strategies where you learn your trade and you become very good at it, to just getting a tip off someone, following that tip and living or dying by whether that person's actually any good. You probably gather from this if you haven't already, because I've mentioned it probably a million times over the past 11 years. I'm not a big fan of following tipsters. Number 2, you'll be self-sufficient, not reliant on a tipster. Self-sufficient, you'll be able to look after yourself. That's really important in this life in general, and it's very important in Betfair trading. Number 3, using software will already put you ahead of 90% of the Betfair users who don't. So remember, most of the punters on Betfair are gamblers. Most of the punters on Betfair are just betting for the fun of it. They're not trying to make any money. And the reality is that's what we take advantage of, and that's why we're able to make money, because we're much more shrewd than that. And as soon as you start using software, you're already ahead of the 90% of Betfair traders who don't. Number 4, create a strategy based off your hypothesis. Now, this is really important. You've got to think of your plan, think of what your hypothesis is, and do that. Number 5, test it to see if it's profitable and how it could be improved. Really important. So what's next? What's next? Well, it's got to be horse racing, right? Just done one on football. I'm basically going to do the exact same thing on horse racing, how to use software to find value. Horse racing selections to bet or trade. I'm looking forward to that one. I think a lot of you guys will be as well. So finally, let's have some reflection questions. I would like to hear your answers. So if you want to, please comment in the forum thread what your answers are. Don't worry if you don't, that's fine. I was sending these out and asking for replies on email. I didn't really get many replies, so I thought I'd just do it this way and we'll see how it goes. But if not, these are still just good questions for you to think about yourself and reflect on the training that you've done, and also reflect a bit on your Betfair trading journey. Remember, this is about you guys, okay? I'm always stressing that point, and it's really important that you do self-reflect and think where you're at. So number 1, do you feel like you can now create your own strategy? Number 2, can you be self-sufficient as a trader? Number 3, can you test the strategy? And number 4, can you improve your strategies? Okay, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this 3rd masterclass lesson. Please let me know. Let me know if you're enjoying it and how it's going. And that's important because then obviously it'll give me a bit more impetus to keep it going. All right, guys, hope you've enjoyed this session. And obviously I'll be back with the next one.